I'm James Williams and this is Chimes Media. So this time I wanted to talk about the Article 13 and 11. This is an EU proposal, and it's going to cause real disruption for internet users, particularly people who are content providers. And you've got to bear in mind that the EU, in spite of it having elected European members of Parliament, it's controlled by a body which is unelected. It's just a bunch of bureaucrats. No disrespect, but if the US's Senate's performance in front of Mark Zuckerberg's end to go by, a lot of these people don't really understand the internet any better than the US Senate does. So yeah. Anyway, on Wednesday the 12th of September 2018, in case this gets dated, in spite of substantial opposition, members of the European Parliament passed legislation by 438 votes to 226 to revise copyright laws. The directive had been rejected by MEPs in July, but there had been more than 250 amendments since, which were sufficient to swing the vote. 250 or more than 250 amendments. My crikey, that's an enormous amount, isn't it? I won't go through all them. They're all night. That is a lot of wangling, isn't it? Really. But anyway, they were obviously determined to get this latest dictat. It's important to mention that dictat from the commissars of the EU empire, and apparently each amendment had to be voted in separately, and was achieved in 15 minutes. So it was a case of quick, vote, that sort of thing. So if you didn't know what you were voting for, you just lost track. 15 minutes of solid voting, and you're going to tell me that they knew what they were doing? They must have been all prepared and swept up beforehand, so they practiced. I think they have to raise their hands, and I think as well there's probably a button that says which way they're voting as well, but they have to raise their hands, a show of hands. So, God, dear me, must have been like the Reich stag or something in Hitler's time, wasn't it? But the interesting thing is, and this is a principle of governments and state control, and I mentioned it as a European empire, and it is an empire as such. But the state, by and large, what states do is take away rights. Okay, you could say, well, I'm going to take away the right to murder each other. That's not a bad right to take away, But we're talking about interference with your life. If the state is interfering with your life intrinsically, down to the last nitty-gritty, who you can say hello to and who you can't, then you're talking about real fascism there, real communism. The two are aligned. They're just sisters to each other, aren't they? Fascism and communism. They're both from the left anyway. Right, so among the British MEPs, only UKIP stood against this diktat. Only UKIP. Labour and what I call the alt-left Conservative Party were unified in their support for this legislation to go through. So much for political plurality, eh? Anyway, the decision has both angered and relieved internet users, depending on which side of the pendulum you hang, because of the conditions it may place on content providers. Now, we don't know what all the amendments are going to affect, so we can't give details. We can say, broad speaking, it's bad, but it depends what the amendments say. Okay, content providers are the vast majority of people who make a video or production of any sort. Basically, the potential for this legislation is to kill creation. It's a creation killer. To give Article 13 its full title, Proposal for a Directive of the European Parliament and of the Council on Copyright in the Digital Single Market. They never like small catchphrases. They always have to have a sentence as a title. Right, it seems that the EU masqueraders of democracy are intensely envious of the power and wealth of Silicon Valley and want a piece of the action. It can potentially force the likes of Google and Facebook to pay publishers every single time someone shares a link to an article. Copyright Directive, which this Article 13 is a part of, was introduced in order to update copyright law for the digital age. But the inclusion of two controversial articles, 11 and 13, led to significant opposition from rights groups and activists. Two articles which have been dubbed the link tax and the upload filter. Right, Article 11, this provision is intended to force big tech platforms like Google and Facebook to pay publishers when they share a link to an article. This could mean the end of services like Google News in the EU. And I think that's happened in Spain already when Spain tried this thing. And so you go to Google News in Spain, apparently not available. Okay, Article 13, this is a provision that activists claim will kill the internet, as it forces all tech companies to filter all user content before it is put online and check for any copyright material. It means that memes containing copyrighted images will be blocked by automated filters under the Copyright Directive, and the effect will be to kill satirical humour. That's what it's claimed. Now that's all very well. I mean, you've got Facebook and Twitter and Google, the big ones, and they already have these algorithms in it to do that. But if you're starting off, if you're going to be a rival company to Google or Facebook, you know, you're going to have limited resources, probably no resources at all, and you've got to go into all this stuff, and it's going to be a nightmare, isn't it? Absolute nightmare. It means there's going to be no rivals to Google unless it's some state-sponsored thing, you know, to do that, which is probably what the communists want to do. Now, this is the bit where you might want to get a good tug of coffee, because I'm going to read through this. This is what Article 13 states. Information society service providers that store and provide to the public access to large amounts of works or other subject matter uploaded by their users shall, in cooperation with right holders, take measures to ensure the functioning of agreements concluded with right holders for the use of their works or other subject matter, or to prevent the availability of their services of works or other subject matter identified by right holders through the cooperation with the service providers. What the hell does that mean? That's all one sentence. That's ridiculous. This is how they write. There's no sort of short, succinct sentences. So I would say that it's probably 70 or 80% of people already lost completely, and it's only the lawyer types who will have any understanding of what that means, right? So those measures, such as the use of effective content recognition technologies, shall be appropriate and proportionate. See, very vague terms. The service providers shall provide right holders with adequate information on the functioning and the deployment of the measures, as well as, when relevant, adequate reporting on the recognition and use of the works and other subject matter. Now, you're not telling me that all those 400 or so MEPs knew what that meant. You know, I can't believe that, because some of them are as dumb as ditch water, you know. Number 2 here, member states shall ensure that the service providers referred to in paragraph 1 put in place complaints and redress mechanisms that are available to users in case of disputes over the application of the measures referred to in paragraph 1. Now this is a fascistic bit. If it's a communist thing, they would do all the controls. They'd have a massive bureaucracy to manage this. But the fascist type of lefties are a bit more efficient. They get you to do it. You have to do it. You have to be providing these things for them, and they basically monitor what goes on. So you have to police your own thing, and if you don't, well, you get done for it, basically. Number 3, member states shall facilitate, where appropriate, the cooperation between the information society service providers and right holders through stakeholder dialogues to define best practices such as appropriate and proportionate content recognition technologies, taking into account, among others, the nature of the services, the availability of the technologies and their effectiveness in light of the technological developments. And that's that's on my thing, it's got 7 lines on that one. That's a 1-sentence thing again, right? What does it mean? Well, Article 13 forces sites and online platforms to use automatic tracking technology to detect when users uploaded content to make sure they weren't sharing copyrighted material. Okay, this is challenging in itself, as there are many millions of uploads going on every day. So you can imagine trying to do that. The activities on the internet are into the millions and billions of transactions and things going on every day. So how practically that's going to work, and if you have a problem, does it get shunted to one side like a pending file, and therefore it has to sit there for weeks for adjudication? You know, it's got nightmare written into it, hasn't it, really? Anyway, currently the onus is on the uploader to ensure the content they are sharing doesn't breach copyright law. Article 13 would make online platforms responsible for ensuring this. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you if you're putting a video online, whereas you will, you're responsible for that because you're doing it, your creation. And now it's the platform providers who have to monitor what you do. They're the ones responsible for it. You know, they've been doing it anyway with all this shutdown of, well, wrongthink, as YouTube have been doing much these days. Right, an obvious example is music videos. The rule would apply to if someone downloaded, say, a new Kanye West music video from YouTube, then re-uploaded it onto their personal channel. YouTube would have to implement technology to recognise the content as copyrighted material and alert Kanye's management. And that management would then be able to order YouTube to take down or modify the video at their discretion. So you can see it's going to clog up the internet. I mean, that's just one simple one, if you like. So if I do a funny cartoon, that's my copyrighted material. But if I used something in that cartoon, this is how I get it, that was produced somewhere else, I could fall foul of that. But even if it goes through, if someone thought, oh, that's clever, I'll repeat that, or I'll do whatever it is, I'll download it and put a little meme on it, and then they could be in breach of the copyright, and then they'd have to contact me, and I might not be to be contacted straight away to say, hey, Joe Bloggs there is, in breach of copyright. What do you reckon to this? Should we take it down or not? You can see how it's going to all spin out of control. There is an obvious overzealousness targeting political commentators, which can only intensify with this going on. Dissident voices will be quashed at the behest of the legislature and with the compliance of the tech companies. There is to be one final vote in mid-2019, so this is not enforced just yet, because the legal beagles have got to put it all in proper format. But anyway, at which time after that there's no going back. So hopefully Britain will have got their Brexit, but seeing as both the alt-left Conservative Party and the Labour Party are in cahoots on this, what's the bet that they're going to just adopt what the EU does? I mean, I don't hold out much hope. There's only UKIP, and it's sad that UKIP haven't got any MPs at the moment. People have to stop thinking about the traditional parties. They've got to chuck these people out. They're not your friends. They pretend to stand for you and represent you, and they shaft you every way they can. I mean, look at what's happened, and I go on about the things that went on to Tommy Robinson, who happens to be a famous person, but there are many other people suffering just as greatly as he has, who are having their human rights trampled all over. And it's not that they've gone and murdered anyone so much, it's just that they had the wrong speak. There's people getting beaten up for, what was it? It was one of the Tommy Robinson interviews. It's that some guy got badly beaten up because he ordered bacon. Right? He ordered bacon. I think it was in Onley Prison. You know, he wasn't even saying I hate Muslims or anything. He ordered bacon. That was not on. Eating bacon is scourged. It's crazy, isn't it? Well, this is what the British government, whether it's Tory or Labour or Liberal Democrats, heaven forbid, this is what these lot stand for. They are the political elite. They do not represent us anymore. They've walked away from us. They don't give a damn about our rights. They have anybody in the country coming in, setting up next door to you. Now, I'm not going to go at migrants, because a lot of migrants I know are nice people. We're not going to go at them per se. But they don't care. They do not care. They don't live in our communities. They don't know what goes on. Portsmouth, as well as elsewhere, is rife with drug problems. The police have run off their feet trying to sort out things. It's crazy. They're getting kids, 13 or 14, getting picked up by the cops because they're being used as drug runners and things. It's incredible. And those in power seem to be oblivious to this. They only listen to your damned feminists who've got a singular goal of destroying all men, that many of them have. Anyway, I digress. That's me going off all, if you like. Okay, so... And you can be sure that if you criticise the EU, you get a knock on the door. I'm pretty sure of that. That's how fascist organisations work. They don't like criticism of themselves. They don't like you looking at them and this is going to go on. We are walking into a new Third Reich, a Fourth Reich, if you like, and it does scare the life out of me, because a lot of people suspect something. They don't really know what's going on, what's going to happen. And a lot of people don't believe it. But if you look at human history is replete with outrageous atrocities. We have it throughout our entire history. It's not a modern thing. It's not something just since Hitler. It's been going on for bloody millennia. They on about, Native Americans. They were massacring each other, different tribes. Africans were massacring each other. This has gone. It's a part of human psyche that we go out and do terrible things to each other on a periodic scale. It's just not. If you don't understand, well, people don't want to see it. It's like the bogeyman in the room. You want to put the covers over your head because you don't believe he's there, but he is there. And we are walking into a very dangerous era. And what's worse is communications, travel is now more universal, more quickly achieved than ever before. Any virus can spread from one part of the world to the other in very short time. And you see this with this, they call it Trump derangement syndrome, but it was before Trump. The derangement was already there. People mixing up their history about what goes on. And you see people like Black Lives Matter condemning Martin Luther King, for what he was saying. He wanted to end, segregation. They want to enforce it. They've gone full circle. Sorry, this is going to go on for hours if I carry on like this, isn't it? God dear. To me, it seems like it's an attack on satire and humour. That's just one part of it. The concern is that because Article 13 mandates the use of artificial intelligence and filtering technologies, that those technologies are not advanced enough to pick up the nuances to content like memes. To a computer, all of the images look reasonably similar, and therefore it might just well block all of them just to be on the safe side. So new music tracks, remixing and sampling other artists could find themselves blocked, as might original artwork based on copyright materials. As far as texting and coding, things like that, developers would potentially have to stop sharing code online, and that would make it more difficult and costly to create new code from scratch. Individual websites and internet service providers will face the repercussions, though what this means, apart from forced deletions, has not been specified. In an effort to save time and resources, most websites would just ban copyrighted material outright in their terms of service, and that would allow them to avoid risking even the whiff of legal trouble. Because the content is dictated by terms of service and not the law, there'd be little chance for the new uploader to appeal. For what it's worth, YouTube has said it is opposed to this law on the basis it could stifle the creative freedom of video makers and impact negatively on their subscriber bases and incomes. So are we going to see a clash of cultures between the United States and the EU? What about Brexit? Well, like I said, it depends on what our legislature does, because, well, if you've got the two main parties, Labour and the alt-left Conservatives, on the same side, and UKIP, the only party that seems to stand up for internet content providers and the like, they're the only ones who stand against them, but they've got no MPs at all, they've got no say in matters. Then what chance do we have? I mean, I think this is something about people abroad don't understand. They see Nigel Farage as Mr. Brexit, and why isn't he Prime Minister? Not so straightforward. There's no president. You've got to go through all the political machinations of political parties. You've got to get the majority number of MPs before your leader can go anywhere near being Prime Minister. And that's why we're always restricted to either being Labour or Conservative in the UK. Anyway, until next time, take care of yourself.
My resolve has never been stronger. In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.